welcome to Stop Button Favorites, a podcast of the website, thestopbutton.com. My name is Andrew Wycliffe. My website is thestopbutton.com. This is episode of Stop Button Favorites. I am talking about The Faculty. Stop Button Favorites is a monthly podcast where I do an audio commentary track for a movie I've written about on the site and is in some way a favorite. Sometimes readers suggest movies to do commentary tracks for. Other times I just pick something. This month I picked it. It's The Faculty from 1998, directed by Robert Rodriguez and written by Kevin Williamson. I am watching the original Miramax home video release, or Dimension home video, the DVD release, just because the movie has been released on Blu-ray, but it's been released, I think, by Mill Creek or whoever the cheaper Disney licensed reprint guys are, the Miramax licensed reprint guys are. But my copy is from Canada because I bought it a while ago. So no idea if those two are the same print. So I figured the original DVD release would be the best idea. And let's get started right now. So The Faculty came out in an off year from the Scream sequels. I remember there was some online excitement for this movie just because it was Robert Patrick, maybe Dark Horizons. Sean Atausi, who was very good on Southland. He's sort of doing TV. But he only had one movie after this. The Outside Providence was the only sort of attempt at this. But until this time, you assumed that Miramax was going to run these younger actors, because I think Sean Hatausi was like 28 or 30 or something, through the Miramax, star-making machine, where eventually they'd graduate to Touchstone and Jerry Bruckheimer. And if you've seen the movie, the way what this actually is and how it must play out, it'd be amazing to just see that visualized after the reveal. Bebe Neuwirth. Jon Stewart being in this was a big deal too. Everybody liked Jon Stewart back then because of, I don't remember what. Daniel von Bargen. So I saw this at a sneak preview, and she's so good. She was in Summer of Sam around this time too, and she just is doing these little guest parts or smaller roles, and going back and seeing her on Frasier when she was an annual visitor. Bebe Neuwirth's really underappreciated. And I wish that she did that Dear Diary pilot for DreamWorks Television that they released as a Oscar short, and it won Best Short Film, and I've wanted to see it since 1993, and I haven't had a chance. I mean, I haven't had an opportunity. So I saw this came out on an off year, a Scream off year. This was like in between, I think, Scream and Scream 2, or Scream 2 and Scream 3. And it was before, if it was before Scream 3, it was before you knew all the problems Scream 3 was going to have. But I saw this at the midnight show, and then I went back the next day or night to see it again with someone else. I can't remember if my sister and I saw it first or if we saw it the next day. But I've been a champion of the faculty since that first viewing. And I went back to it last year, wanting to confirm my opinion of the film. The implication of this behavior being standard is one of the things I love about the sort of texture of the movie. That even though these characters aren't around for a long time, if they aren't, not to give any spoilers yet, there's a real ground situation. And in a lot of ways, it's very much like how the old Universal 50s sci-fi movies would work, where you'd have this town of people with pre-existing problems and things. And it's just nice to see in this, because we haven't even gotten to what the actual gimmick of the movie is yet, that it's an alien invasion with teenagers fighting it. Excuse me. It's still this sort of Scream-esque sequence. I think this is the most... No, I guess Sin City in some way. Well, I don't know. Is this the most traditional cast that Rodriguez has had? Just with Piper Laurie and Bebe Neuwirth. You don't really see them in Sin City 2 or whatever. And then it's before his hit was Spy Kids, is what sort of made Robert Rodriguez. I had seen all of his movies. I mean, I'd seen, all three of them at this point. And you sort of saw, nice little Terminator 2 reference. It was just a very strange sort of... The late 90s with Scream and things like that, there was a real support for this idea of the Dimension films having a high, if not high profile, then... And now we get the almost John Carpenter-y thing there. But the Dimension films could have, their Hellraiser direct-to-videos, but also have solid theatrical things. Legitimacy, I guess, is what I was trying to say. And so, nice visual introduction from Rodriguez of all the characters. We already had Jordana Brewster. It's Josh Hartnett in the car. I think he'd been in H2O at this point. And H2O was also the idea that Dimension could do films of merit. And then I think it's Elijah Wood. Yep. I think Elijah Wood was one of the reasons I was interested in seeing this. I was a big Elijah Wood fan when I was a kid, when I was 14 or Clea Duvall. The War. I really like The War, the Kevin Costner one. And then now if you it's sort of impossible to see Jordana Brewster in anything else just because, she's so good in this. She can sell the idea that she's got up at 5 a.m. to put on her lipstick. But if you're counting the named cast, you'll see a lot of similarities between them and the Breakfast Club kids. It's Elijah Wood, okay. Laura Harris was in something called The Highwayman with Jason Priestley and Stephen McHattie. It's worth a look. The slapping kids were they get called out in the credits. One of the things about Hartnett's performance in this is, and I wonder, I feel like it's got to be some of the intentional on Rodriguez and whoever. I think Rodriguez edited this, but you'll notice that they cut his reaction shots a little differently than everybody else's, and it creates this standoffishness. Salma Hayek. There's Harry Knowles cashing in on Ain't It Cool News back when that would matter. Famke Janssen. Again, we didn't really meet the kids. We Coach is drinking a lot of water. Sorry. Watching Kevin Williamson movies, you feel like you're just pulling rewrites of existing scenes from other movies. Like, it's hard to watch. It's not hard to watch them. It's just when I'm trying to think of things to talk about, obviously we've got a Halloween reference here, which had just been done in Halloween H2O, so it was kind of bold to do it again. But in that scene before, the teacher's lounge is very much like the movie Teachers, which one assumes Williamson would be familiar with. I think every teen movie at this point had started doing, that reading scene and the questioning, the Socratic method scene. But I think Halloween 78 is the first one that certainly anybody thinks about. But of course, the John Hughes movies would have changed, and that was one quick thing I wanted to talk about, was how teen movies changed in the 80s thanks to VHS, thanks to home video, thanks to cable. And so later... Rodriguez has that quick editing, but he's not changing. He's not cutting people in the middle of their expressions. I really should have checked to see if he actually edited this, but I guess I'd never thought about how important the cuts are in the dialogue sequences. But they're going to be, because Williamson likes to talk. I think I had an edition of that English book, or history book, but in college, so... And of course, the use of licensed music to sell soundtracks, and but used smart enough to transition scenes here. Was anybody in this actually of high school age? Okay, so 18 minutes in, we still aren't into things. Take 7 minutes out. But this sequence here, and Rodriguez shot this in Texas for Ohio. So it's kind of like California for Illinois and Halloween, and just pieces of the film feel very much like, if not direct Carpenter homage, it feels very much like a callback to the late 70s sort of horror movies. This, Carrie, no, I'm sorry, not this, obviously. Halloween, Carrie, the one that Don Coscarelli did, not Phantasm, the Kenny and Company. It has that, you can sort of see, the influence of growing up on crappy after school specials, or even worse, the ones shown in school, and that things being set up very while still sort of artificially cinematic, with a lot more emphasis on actual sort of high school experience, I guess. Which is one of the things that so yeah, I mean, it's 20 minutes in now, and we still don't have the established character relationships, anything yet. It's just, we have the named characters, and we see them coming together here. And we just learned what? We just learned octopi are not related to anything else on the planet a couple weeks ago, right? Something like that. That would be Usher on the beginnings of his film career. Apparently there were lots and lots of post-production cuts on this, so they cut out a whole character, supposedly. There's a fashion promotion with Tommy Hilfiger or something. I mean, it was Dimension trying to exert themselves as sort of branding teen movies, and didn't work for them. And it distracted from the fact that they have this really strong film. I mean, if you just look at how Rodriguez works on it. And then we have the early CGI, or the early cheap CGI. But Rodriguez is taking a very serious, while still exaggerated, approach to it. He also doesn't do the humor. He doesn't do the Kevin Williamson one-liners. He just lets them fly through. Is he supposed to be swearing in front of students? I think the Puppet Masters had come out at this time, so like we'd had the Alien Possession remakes of the 90s, and it didn't really catch on. Not when Abel Fiara did Body Snatchers, not when the Puppet Masters came out. So it seems weird that they would have tried for yet another alien possession and expected a different result. It's love for Upper Patrick. He was in Copland, 97? And he was barely in it, but it was enough that you could just sort of see that he did have potential that had been ignored following Terminator 2. And I think he was on The Sopranos around the same time, and so Williamson's pretty slick about how he sets up how the eventual character interactions go. It's meandering without appearing too forced. But you can definitely see that he's got it figured out. It's very plotted, which is nice. It's just kind of rough. I mean, who's the audience for this movie? It is very much Scream as a sci-fi Scream, only there's never been a hit. I mean, if Scream is a smart version of Friday the 13th, The Faculty then, with less self-reference, The Faculty is what, a smarter high school version of Tobe Hooper's Invaders from Mars. It's not a existing genre. The sort of sci-fi alien invasion genre never took off in the 80s. There's all these examples of it that I actually want to see, but I haven't actually seen them. Is it Strange Invaders and some other things? I'm not thinking of Mac and Me. I'm thinking of the first round of directors who had grown up watching the old sci-fi on TV and got around to making movies. And that sort of sums it up, right? Especially how Rodriguez's editing style makes it easy to, if not dislike Zeke, then you can. It's just an odd handling of it, right? Like we go through this long exchange where the punchline, he's being cruel, and we aren't supposed to dislike him yet, though. So Elijah Wood, who I assumed would be sort of the lead since he was the biggest star, he's now had adventures with Sean Hatausi, Jordana Brewster. Who else? It's Marco Beltrami, too. I mean, he always was the sort of cheap composer Miramax would hire. It was a shock when he actually was on something from another studio. But he does a good job with it. I just remember how everybody was always sad that, John Ottman didn't edit Halloween H2O. He just did the music because he had edited Usual Suspects. By everybody, I mean the commenters on Dark Horizons. Still set up. 30 minutes in. What is it? This present action were 20-ish hours. Plus minus a few because we had the scene on the field. And then it is a dangerous, uncomfortable scene. CG blood in the 90s had some problems. Was that a Wrath of Khan reference there? With the ear? Running through the halls. Bebe Neuwirth in something low cut to show off her changes. She left him. And yeah, we're still not. Oh, Christopher McDonald. Okay, so I just was watching SLC Punk. He's in it, and so is Summer Phoenix, who plays the yelling girl in the hallway earlier. But the whole calling it the faculty, it almost... The pace of the movie is peculiar, right? It brings together its cast eventually in a very abnormal way. In that we're a third into the movie right now, and we don't have the principals together yet. And there are a lot of principals. I think, was there 5 of them? 5 named characters at the beginning? So it's just, or 6. And it's just strange that it's got such a long intro. And that long intro is a result of Williamson on his sort of TV interests. With the opening of the Scream movies, of this movie, it's sort of spending a lot of time on something else and then starting the story. And the faculty, of course, doesn't have Neve Campbell running through the movie as the lead. It has, the supporting cast of a Scream movie without that lead, which is strange, especially from a narrative standpoint. It makes you wonder what Williamson's drafts look like. It really actually showcases his a certain quality to it, of how to structure. There's only so much you can do with it, but it works out. But I don't know, I never watched Dawson's Creek, but it seems like it would only work out for a pilot. And Elijah Wood is, I guess, the closest thing to a lead. And Rodriguez just has a very interesting take on doing a mainstream sequence like this one. You've got this script that you could see going any number of ways and how Rodriguez could play it out, but instead he sort of goes with this very tight, not many establishing shots. The interest, as important as the background, as important as the setting is, these Harrington High establishing shots are about the content, and it's not Rodriguez's enthusiasm for the project is his scale for the project is very closed. He isn't interested in doing anything grandiose. And that's why the grandiose finish is such a standout. And I hadn't seen, like I said, we only watched Invaders from Mars for the podcast a couple years ago, and I hadn't seen it before then. And Invaders from Mars also, captures that the additional danger of when it's the teenager or the child being the only one who knows that they have no support system, or the town's been invaded by aliens. I'm sorry, I don't know how to soften that. 42 minutes in, right? So there's about an hour left. Probably, 53 minutes of actual action left before the end credits and epilogues. So the movie still hasn't really established, I guess its pace in some ways. We're getting to see the changes to the faculty, which certainly plays into the title of the film. But they're not... You could do the whole movie with them being suspicious and there never being an alien takeover. That would be the sort of smarter take on it. Instead, you've got this mix of a teen movie. And obviously, they're a couple that can be mistaken for brother and sister. Oh, so we're seeing their flirtations 44 minutes in, which is probably, 38 minutes since we met the characters. It's Williamson does a good job layering in the character stuff so it doesn't feel forced. Someone should try to do a movie like this in the sort of internet age. Sort of the smartphone. This is the test. I think that was a trailer moment. Daniel von Bargen, of course, never really gets as appreciated as he should be. But then, 45 minutes in, he's flirting with the new girl, something that could have been established so much earlier. And this also comes after the scene with Famke Janssen, which in some ways means that Hartnett gets the only role that has like two actual layers. Shauna Towsey gets, 1.5. Clea Duvall gets 1.5. Elijah Wood, he gets the parent, so I guess he gets 2 as well. Jordana Brewster actually gets the least. So basically, you could have done this without any of the introduction, too. And then we establish that they, of course, know each other. Because they're outliers. Always been somewhat convinced that this is filmed at a different location than the establishing shots. So was this before or after? This was somewhat concurrent to Good Will Hunting, but the idea of having your super observant, intelligent, underachieving character. Actually, this was after Good Will Hunting, wasn't it? Yeah. About a year after. So Salma Hayek didn't get gussied up, but Famke Janssen and Bebe Neuwirth did. So again, I'm not entirely sure that it's believable a teacher could say that in front of students. But again, it suggests this sort of pre-existing relationship that's, been not even really hinted at. It's just part of the texture of the movie and the characters. And that's the difference between this and something like Halloween H2O, right? Halloween H2O doesn't have any of this subtlety, any of this. It has a different subtlety. It has a different things going on, but it doesn't have this level of care. And then now we have the Jamie Kennedy sequence from the Puppet Masters and the Body Snatchers. Did Kevin Williamson really like these movies? Because I just can't see how he sold Miramax on it. They sold Harvey and Bob on, but this whole concept of, the alien invasion because they've always been here or something, I feel like that was actually played up in promotion too, like a possible explanation for things. Because this was post-Independence Day as well. And Men in Black, right? She just said it. So it's this, starting in about 94. Stargate had a lot of not press. It had a lot of promotion, and it sort of got the idea of the mainstream sci-fi with aliens movie, with aliens in costume movie, and that possibility. Now, of course, this didn't have aliens in costumes, and neither did many of the sci-fi movies of 95 to 2001, sort of ending with Evolution's bomb. But now, so we've got this core of 4. We've got the I love the photography. I love that soft late 90s photography. Nobody would do this anymore on film. Nobody would do this anymore without rushing. Rodriguez takes a lot of care for how he shoots the characters. For how he shoots the dialogue. And it's, what had he made by now? He'd made Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn, and El Mariachi. And it suggests this sort of smooth, naturalistic filmmaking style that doesn't really exhibit in anything else that I've seen anyway. This is another cover of a famous school song. 55 minutes in. Like, we're over halfway there. Like, we don't need, this is too late for, and I think this is some of the pacing problem, is it's supposed to be Scream with aliens, only it's not paced the right way. It's not paced the same way, and you couldn't duplicate the result, the enthusiasm result, which Scream 2 did match those beats, those intensity beats. And there's the sort of watching it after, the ending, certain scenes. You can look for how Rodriguez does things to, foreshadow, not foreshadow. I actually am curious if they had the ending sold or decided before they did things. So yeah, now we've got the The Hidden, right? The Hidden. What was that? 87, right? Jack Shoulder. So yeah, and They Live. I mean, that was a stunt man. This presupposes that The Hidden and They Live were popular enough that people would just be clamoring for a, concept version of that. And nobody was. I mean, it's kind of incredible when you think about it. It's The Thing, The Hidden, They Live, all are not infamous bombs, but certainly they were. So it's sort of the people being self-aware of being inside of a sci-fi movie, as in Scream, you're aware of being inside of a horror movie. Only Rodriguez doesn't play it for the irony of it. He plays it for its own internal reality. But yeah, I mean, like, this sequence, really, the alien possessed people whisper your name and stare at you in certain ways? I mean, there's no... The rules of the faculty aliens are undetermined or inconsistent. It makes for just a very strange film, which I've been saying, I think, but it's just like, this is when the movie starts. Your movie just started. It's 59 minutes in. You know, we know, the audience knows that the aliens are invading the school. We've known since very early on. And it's taken the protagonists of the movie 50 minutes-ish. If you want to say you had to see the opening with Bebe Neuwirth to buy into the concept of the film, that it wasn't predetermined by going to the movie and knowing that from previews it was about aliens invading a school. And it's a writer's, movie in many ways, just in that the so I guess what I mean by that it's a writer's movie is that, so we're 50 minutes in before the audience catches up, or before the characters catch up with what the audience already knows. That's a very different narrative agreement to have, right? It's incredibly uncommon. You're over halfway through. Nobody really actually suspects that it's an alien, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like Elijah Wood knew at the beginning. It's very non-traditional, and it got made. But it didn't really. I mean, there's probably all sorts of edits and things like that went wrong. Characters removed, runtime, blah, blah, blah. There's post-production issues. Yet in many ways, it still shows you how a film structured like this would work. And the reason it shows you that is because of how well made it is from Rodriguez's standpoint and just the actors. And just the care put into every sort of Zeke's lab, Elijah Wood's room, the school. It's very not sure how you'd know that just from looking at a thing. Did we just have I think we just had a goof with the glasses coming on and off. I mean, when Delilah's secretly smart because she wears glasses. Zeke is, smart and he wears glasses. Rodriguez isn't exactly... He's not going over... What am I trying to say here? He's not exactly pandering, but he is using a very traditionally agreed upon visual cues, right? People with glasses are smarter. This came after Mars Attacks, too, and Mars Attacks had bombed. So it's just a very... it's using some of the same language as Mars Attacks to tell its story, and it was similarly not well received. It's like people don't want this sort of these filmmaking techniques executed. And this is an interesting, nobody wants to believe any of this. And by that I mean that when you're watching this scene of the people fighting, you don't want it to be the scene in the thing. You don't secretly want it to somebody to start jumping up and down. You want all of these characters to be okay, but you've gotten to the part in the movie where we have to have the scene with everybody tied to a chair and the petri dishes of blood. Because it feels like when you question the characters, and this is the result of spending 55 minutes with them, that you do identify with them, that you care about them in a way that is different from not wanting them to grotesquely die and making an uncomfortable visual sequence. Like in The Thing, where in some cases you can say you don't really like whoever, but you don't exactly want to see his hands eaten off by a dog monster or a stomach monster. This is just a really well done sequence from Rodriguez. So what is this stuff? It's sugar and caffeine? And I think actually Beltrami's score being so having these elements of sort of your suspense, whatever genre, standoffs and things like that, it adds to sort of the irregularness of the film in a way that and there is just this awesome sort of the implied pre-existing relationships. I love it. How much caffeine do you have to be this excited? And big surprise. Big surprise. And there's only 33:50 left in the movie with end credits. So this is how we get over the problem of us starting our movie at, 55 minutes in. That Clea Duvall never, she's been in Argo. That was her biggest thing after this. It makes me sad. It makes me so sad because she's so good. And it's just like, if they didn't sit around and practice and rehearse with the Breakfast Club script, I always want to pretend that they did, just because it'd just be amazing if they had, because it just feels like it, it just... I don't know if the teen sports movies had started at this point either. I think they had the sort of 90s teen sports movies. It's just such an odd 7 years of movies, just as these, your Shakespeare in high school genre would start. Your Shakespeare in high school genre would fail. These genres matured and went from being not serious to serious to then figuring in the sort of 2004-ish not direct to DVD, but movies that didn't see a real theatrical release. Sort of taking the place, not being legitimized, but being a business reality, and how that changed this level of, sort of medium low budgeted films. But it's like Bebe Neuwirth, I always feel like isn't actually in this movie very much, but she is, and it's because of how it's paced out. That, we had this long summary of a day and the school, and then now the action is closer to real time. Actually, I wonder if post-battle Star things would be. But again, there's a very comedic moment there that Rodriguez doesn't do. Doesn't have any interest in doing. And that's kind of, really cool that he doesn't. There's no action. There's no. And so they've already tricked us, right? We've already had Jordana Brewster be the sick one after, when was she infected? Everybody else acted so weird, but she didn't. And so now, can they trick us again? What are the ramifications of that? And then, of course, there's a sort of almost fly reference coming up, just in tone. And I guess in some ways the faculty is always that. I always am saying things like, oh, I wish John Carpenter would have directed a family drama or something like that, just to see how an attentive, thoughtful director handles something outside of his or her genre. The faculty is a good example of it. But then when bringing up the Thing references, that the betrayal of the sort of likable man within, So we just had Stan and Stokely have their romantic interlude, and it just seemed There's just this weird cruelty. It's kind of like, in some ways of this, it's like Night Watch. In terms of, I don't know, budget or whatever. But just in terms of so lots has happened. We've lost two of our characters right after they've discovered that they could be turned into aliens. Then we have a siege movie. I like how the attention was paid to do a Jim echo. Like, and that's kind of John Hughes came out of comedy. His teen movies were sort of based on a comedy influence. And comedy has a different agreement with the audience than a different genre, right? It has an agreement with the audience, right? Like, a comedy is trying to provoke a reaction from the audience. Whereas a drama isn't. Necessarily. A melodrama might be trying to get you to cry, but a regular drama is not trying to get you to cry. Or laugh. But a comedy is. John Hughes is trying to laugh. So he's trying to get a reaction out of his audience, and he brought that to his teen movies, and that sort of carried over into how teen movies worked. And what Scream did was sort of bring together these two genres that are trying to provoke reactions out of their audiences, the horror genre and the teen genre. But it works differently, So The Faculty sort of being a derivative in this line of the Scream approach through, the studio and what it filled the Scream release date, the Christmas release date. This is supposed to be the sci-fi version of I Know What You Did Last Summer, just with Kevin Williamson on board or whatnot. But those comparisons, or that relationship, you don't need sort of these Breakfast Club like archetypes and very general Breakfast Club type archetypes. Williamson comes up with some far superior characterizations, far less caricature. So I guess I've always wondered if the Thing homage, which doesn't look as good as the Thing, of course, because it's crappy 1998 CG, but at least it's not on, too crisp video. I mean, the headless body is far superior to the walking head. But again, it's too much. This is too out there for I don't know if I'd say too out there for mainstream audiences, but it's certainly, you don't have the same agreement. And that's kind of the thing with your mainstream, very commercial movie is that you do have to look at it from the commerce perspective, but you just look at the care that Rodriguez took with that shot. Sort of the gentle moving in. It's very cool. It's a very gentle way of doing the movie. And he really hasn't had a lot of jump scares, if you think about it. Not in a while. Even the Delilah shot, he carried that out. This, are we going for a jump or are we going for... No, we're going for there's a giant Lovecraftian monster, and this is what a giant Lovecraftian monster looks like on our budget. So... what are we going to do with it? And it's going to be as big as it can be. And as far as the budget goes and how it, what you can do on the budget, Rodriguez has that constraint that he obviously had on El Mariachi and Desperado to some extent, and From Dusk Till Dawn to some extent, is that that inventiveness is there, that sort of that creativity with lack of to make up for lack of money. I think the chlorine in the water would be bad for the alien. So now, as we return to sort of the shadowy shape here, I just wish somehow there was a flashback to seeing however she approached the coach in that opening shot. I think it'd be interesting to see how... it'd be interesting to see just because Harris's performance in this is, I feel, very underappreciated, even in terms of how much the faculty is appreciated, which isn't very much. And here, this was a goof. So she closes it off her nose and she opens the thing and that. In the shot, it's the bottom of the pen cap is there. So either it's a big, they weren't thinking, or she wasn't always the killer. But again, very Thing-like reference that there are some surprises in how the sort of possessed aliens deal with things. It's sort of weird because it is like this sort of alien possession thing where, as horror movies and possession has sort of, I guess, made a cultural comeback, Exorcist-like possession. The alien body snatchers, it's become a standard. And what started as something budgetary, right? Like you don't have to do makeup if the alien looks like your regular cast member, has turned into something else. It's got grandiosity to it. Same with zombies. There's grandiosity to something that in most ways is supposed to be a low budget technique. Very cool shot. Nobody's going to appreciate. It's hard not to think of Alan Moore's sort of Lovecraft stuff, even though it's more recent than this, just because giant fish people, really, aquatic animals. There's no explanation of how the alien got to Earth. None of that. I mean, it's very... And here's your Thing moment, except here it's it's not, the only practical thing was probably the lockers. And I mean, I've seen this movie 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 7 times, and I swear I never remember who the final person is, just because it's so anti Last Girl. It's so anti Nev Campbell is the protagonist. It's so anti Jamie Lee Curtis that I get wrapped up in everything else before I get to the end. And it's like, of course it's Elijah Wood. He's the only movie star in it. And was it all for nothing? I mean, you had to realize this is what, 98? Special effects had gone through the major CG revolution, right? Yet, Tremors was probably either equally budgeted or lower budgeted sort of effects movie, and it had more emphasis on those effects. Faculty is just, it had no market. It had no audience. Just, it doesn't commercially work the same way as the Scream movies do, or even any of the like Miramax teen movies. Because it came amongst that era as well. Of Miramax doing the teen comedies. And now we get the epilogues. Okay, so it is 1 month later. So we're at about the 98-minute mark. You erase the first 8 minutes of the movie. And now it's just a mystery about what happened to faculty members. It's just like... And then we have this sort of... peculiarness of it. And of course she's cleaned up a little because her life is sunny, which, is what it is. And let's see here. How does... I guess her hair's less red, so they look less like brother and sister. But he looks cooler, right? But it's because there's... it's a little much, right? Like Time Magazine, Alien Invasion. It's a little much, but... It's reminding us that we really did like Jordana Brewster. And then there's our more things change, the more they stay the same, and end of the movie. Okay, so Kevin Williamson writing somebody else's script. I forgot that. Produced by Rodriguez's wife, which makes it very different than the Scream movies, which were Conrad Woods and Marco Beltrami, Enrique, I forgot his last name. Oh, Rodriguez probably did edit it because he did not give an edit credit. So now we're in alphabetical order with the cast. And does Von Bargen get a credit? He should. I mean, just the silliness that he does good. Jon Stewart's the only one who gets like sort of this cut scene from, Yep, Summer Phoenix and John Abrams. Jon Stewart gets this cut scene from after, everything's okay. It's just a very strange inclusion. The scene clearly wouldn't have worked, but, it's a fun inclusion. Kurtzman, Nicotero, Rodriguez was using real practical effects guys, and I sort of remember that it was delayed because of that. Or there were problems with it, and they had to switch over to the CGI. Yep, alphabetical order again for the cast list. And it's kind of like who plays Casey's mom. Doesn't really matter, even though she's in it just as much as Christopher McDonald, except for dropping him off for school. And now yet another cover. I mean, it's the sort of Miramax movie-making machine of the late 90s, and seeing one that they clearly put the work into, but it didn't get any of the result that they sort of would have wanted from it. And the same thing happened with 54. And in some ways it happened when you take a number of measured successes and make conclusions from them and try to apply that to other things. Avid, Rodriguez edited on Avid. I remember that was a big deal back in the late 90s. Reading interviews with him where he talked about he cut digitally early. And yeah, The Faculty. Bernie Wrightson was the conceptual designer. How crazy is that? Could have looked better. Just saying. I don't really see Bernie Wrightson as a guy for doing aliens. Cute ones. He did a really cute one in Swamp Thing at the beginning, but Wrightson's horror style is a little bit different. Centropolis Effects, so they used the special effects company created by, I think Centropolis is the company that Emmerich and what's it called came up with, Devlin. So there you go, Tommy Hilfiger, like I said, town of Texas, Austin, Texas area, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it's really a killer soundtrack. There's like Sheryl Crow on it. I mean, it's just everything. You can find Creed, Garbage. It's just anything you could get. Oddly enough, I always thought the song Helpless by D-Generation, which is a glam punk band, was in this movie, but maybe not. So that's the end of the movie. Thanks for listening. I'm assuming I was a little bit better about the long pauses than I was during Innocent Blood last month. Next month's episode is going to be on The Searchers, which will be pretty cool to do. Love The Searchers. That'll be September 20th, a Sunday. And thanks for listening to this episode of Stop Button Favorites. Once again, the website is thestopbutton.com. And I've been Andrew Wycliffe.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.